Hello everyone, my name is Vincent Cavez and I'm here to present challenges of music score writing and the potentials of interactive surfaces. This work was done with Catherine Letondal from Université de Toulouse, along with Emmanuel Pietriga and Appert from Université Paris-Saclay. Composers who write music and scores use music notation programs like Final and MuseScore throughout their creative process. But while those programs enable composers to create high-quality scores by enforcing many musical notation rules, a process called engraving, they also impede the more creative stages in the composition process because of their lack of flexibility. As you can see, they are filled with imposed menus and options that constitute a very structured framework. This is why composers usually combine these desktop tools with other mediums, especially paper, which allow them to draw, scratch, cut pieces of score, stitch them together. It's really convenient for creativity purposes, but because they still need to produce a standardized score, they go back and forth between these mediums. But what about interactive surfaces that support pen and touch? They could combine the best of both worlds to resolve tensions between the need for structure and the need for flexibility. The pen allows for expressive handwriting and touch allows for intuitive manipulation, while the interactive surface offers computing power and a graphical user interface. While it has been explored in some commercial applications, such as Dorico and StaffPad. But even if some of them allow handwriting recognition as input, their global interaction model remains the same as the desktop one, and they do not offer more overall flexibility. We believe that this approach misses a lot of opportunities. This is why we advocate for a more comprehensive redesign of the whole interaction model to reveal the full potential of interactive surfaces, and we propose several design opportunities which leverage this potential. But such a redesign first requires close observation of composers' creative processes and of the challenges they face. In this paper, we report on 9 interviews with professional music composers following a semi-structured qualitative study protocol. Although all of them received academic training in music theory, and most of them write in the modern classical style, their profiles vary in their music writing activities, in the music notation software they use, in their main writing tools, and in their experience with music writing. The interviews were composed of these 6 blocks of questions, aiming to capture various aspects of their process. Now, the order of the factual questions within these blocks was adapted during the course of the interviews to create a more fluent conversation, and generative questions complemented the factual ones to allow interviewees to expand on some topics. We also included a final block of questions about their potential use of tablets, which revealed that none of them currently use tablets for music writing. The interviews were recorded and transcribed, and the transcripts were then analyzed using 2 complementary analyses with specific objectives in mind. The first one aimed to understand their individual work process to identify the positive and negative usability-related aspects of their music writing tools and workflow. And the second one aimed to understand their individual thought process to capture insights about their creative activities. Then, the observations were correlated to pinpoint areas where usability issues might impact composers' creative process. For the analysis of composers' work process, we relied on the cognitive dimensions of notation framework that we adopted from the works of Nash and Whitley and Blackwell to fit the context of music notation, considering not only the notation itself, but also the tools and environments to manipulate that notation as well. As you can see, every cognitive dimension had a matching interpretation which guided the filtering and classification of relevant comments. So the first step of this analysis was to filter and sort comments into a first table, with cognitive dimension in rows and composer in columns, just like this. The second step of this analysis was to further sort the comments in a second table, wherein they were aggregated into higher-level observations and categorized based on 5 activities. Each of these observations could match several cognitive dimensions in a positive or in a negative way, so it was color-coded as such. And the table also provided explicit cross-references to the original raw comments of the previous table. The second analysis focused on the thought process, allowed us to collect comments that were not covered by the first one. It comprised higher-level remarks from composers about their creative process, which were methodically filtered, sorted, and aggregated into high-level insights, just like this. Now, these insights can be categorized under the following themes: interplay between details and high-level concerns, experience of time, and shaping of a specific individual. The first one relates to the recurring mentions of a micro and macro level, because music is an art of details that needs to be refined, but at the same time, it's essential to take a step back and have a different perspective and understanding of the piece. And as different composers have different practices, this interplay can take many forms. The second theme is about the important role of time and the aspects of linearity and change that come with it. Time, because elements and episodes in a score needs to be skillfully balanced. Linearity, because of the way listeners experience the piece, opposed to the way composers often conceive it. And change, because of the need for novelty through the piece. And the last one is about the assembly challenges that composers face when putting the piece together. They have all kinds of metaphors for the way they see their score and how they progressively bring it to life. Going back to the composer's work process, the comments were organized according to these 5 activities: transcription, incrementation, modification, exploratory design, and search. The first one, transcription, is about the numerous copying tasks they have to engage in, because of the various tools and mediums they have to use. It takes a lot of time and it's very repetitive, so for each case we analyze the usability issues. Incrementation is the activity of purely adding or removing bits of information. Our first takeaway is that music notation software make composers sacrifice flexibility for aesthetics, because working as a final product can cause major issues of form and positions, even from the tiniest incrementation. Our second takeaway is that the copy and paste function plays a central role in their work because it represents a huge time saver, but there is a lot of room for improvement. Modification focuses on reorganizing the layouts of existing notation, and this activity holds multiple dependencies between levels, because some elements are attached to a measure and some others are attached to the page, and because adjusting the layout of measures in a page is extremely delicate and versatile. Exploratory design is when composers go through writing without being sure of what will result, in order to see and understand the music mechanisms. When they do it on the final score, they have to adopt many strategies to benefit from the context without disturbing the work done earlier in ways difficult to predict. When they do it away from the final score, for instance after printing a paper version of it, they are bound to transcribe their findings. Finally, composers are constantly searching for information within the score, either when they are looking for an element or reviewing their work, checking for possible mistakes. To do so, they rely on 5 main strategies, and every one of them holds its specific trade-offs and usability issues. Now, based on all of these insights and observations, we think we can do more. But how? We propose 3 design opportunities to improve composers' creative process: breaking down musical elements, breaking the score's homogeneity, breaking the score's linear structure. Breaking down musical elements, because musical elements are very rich in information. They tell us about pitch, rhythm, accidentals, dynamics, layouts. Thanks to the pen, which has the capacity to point and delineate with precision, tasks related to details like copy and paste could be enriched by giving composers the means to specify their intention. One could also imagine a search tool where composers would write and draw a sequence they want to find in the score, with just the note heads, just the rhythms, or a combination of both. Breaking the score's homogeneity to ease the capture of fleeting thoughts and reduce transcription tasks by doing everything in the same place. We believe it's important to allow flexibility between draft and engraved notation to let composers choose when to interpret pen inputs. This would give them agency on what is fixed and what is temporary. This flexibility could also be between notation and other types of content, like audio recordings, PDF files, or pictures. And finally, breaking the score's linear structure, because composing is trying things out, and composers should be able to do that without being afraid of ruining their work. A well-designed infinite canvas mode could be used as a storage space as well as a sandbox to experiment with fragments safely while remaining in context. We believe that these 3 design opportunities, drawn from our combined analysis, have the potential to improve composers' experience and let them focus on what's important: creativity. Thank you for your attention.